Your thoughts are not you. Read that again. Your thoughts are not you. They are events that occur within your consciousness, patterns of mental energy that flow through your mind, but they are not the totality of who you are. Yet most people live their entire lives believing they are their thoughts, identifying completely with every mental impulse, every worry, every fear, every passing notion that crosses their awareness. They believe they have no choice but to think what they think, feel what they feel, and accept whatever mental narrative their mind presents to them. And this single misunderstanding, this failure to recognize the difference between the thinker and the thoughts, keeps millions of people trapped in lives far beneath what they're capable of creating. But here's the truth that changes everything. You can control your thoughts. Not perfectly, not instantly, but progressively, deliberately, systematically. You can learn to observe your mental patterns without being controlled by them. You can identify thoughts that serve your growth and amplify them. You can recognize thoughts that diminish you and replace them. You can, through patient practice and unwavering commitment, become the master of your inner world rather than its servant. And when you master your inner world, when you take conscious control of the thoughts that occupy your mind, your outer world begins to transform in ways that will astonish you. This isn't mysticism. This isn't wishful thinking. This is a principle as reliable as any law of physics. Your thoughts shape your reality, not in some vague philosophical sense, but in concrete, measurable ways. Your thoughts determine what you notice and what you ignore. They influence what you believe is possible and what you believe is beyond you. They shape your emotions, which drive your actions, which create your results. Everything you've achieved or failed to achieve began with a thought. Every relationship, every success, every failure, every habit, every pattern in your life can be traced back to thoughts you thought repeatedly until they became beliefs, and beliefs you held until they became your reality. Most people don't realize this because they've never stopped to observe their own thinking. They've never stood back from the constant stream of mental chatter and asked, where do these thoughts come from? Why do I think this way? Is this thought serving me or sabotaging me? They simply accept whatever their mind presents as if they have no choice in the matter. They think negative thoughts and feel bad. They think anxious thoughts and feel anxious. They think limiting thoughts and live limited lives, never recognizing that they could choose different thoughts and experience different outcomes. But you're different. You're here because somewhere inside you, you know there's more available to you than what you're currently experiencing. You sense that the limitations you face aren't really limitations at all. They're patterns of thought that have calcified into habits, into beliefs, into an entire worldview that constrains what you attempt and what you achieve. And you're right. The ceiling on your life isn't external, it's internal. It's not what the world will allow. It's what you believe you can accomplish. It's not what's actually possible. It's what you've convinced yourself is possible. Now let me be clear about what I mean when I say you can control your thoughts. I'm not suggesting you can simply decide to never think a negative thought again and have that be the end of it. That's not how the mind works. Thoughts arise spontaneously, shaped by years of conditioning, by experiences you've had, by beliefs you've absorbed from your environment, by patterns established so long ago you don't even remember forming them. You can't stop thoughts from arising any more than you can stop your heart from beating. But what you can do, what you absolutely must learn to do, is choose which thoughts you engage with, which thoughts you empower through your attention, which thoughts you allow to influence your emotions and actions. Think of your mind as a garden. Thoughts are like seeds that blow in on the wind. Some are flowers, some are weeds. You didn't plant them, you didn't invite them, but they land in your consciousness nonetheless. Now, the unskilled gardener, the person who doesn't understand thought control, allows every seed to take root. They water the weeds as readily as they water the flowers. They give as much attention to destructive thoughts as constructive ones. And then they wonder why their garden, their life, is overrun with problems and limitations and suffering. The skilled gardener, the person who has learned to control their thoughts, does something different. They observe which seeds are landing. They identify the weeds quickly. Before they can establish deep roots, they consciously refuse to water them, refuse to give them the attention and emotional energy they need to grow. And they actively cultivate the flowers, the thoughts that align with their goals, their values, their vision for who they want to become. Over time, through consistent practice, their garden transforms. The weeds don't disappear entirely. New ones blow in constantly, but they never gain dominance because they're identified and removed before they can spread. This is what it means to control your thoughts. Not to have a perfect mind free from negativity, but to have a disciplined mind that recognizes useful thoughts from destructive ones and consciously chooses which to cultivate. And this discipline, this ability to direct your own consciousness, is perhaps the most valuable skill you can develop, because everything else in your life flows from it. So how do you develop this discipline? It begins with observation. Before you can control your thoughts, you must first become aware of them. And most people have never truly observed their own thinking. They've never stepped back from the constant mental chatter and simply watched what their mind does when left to its own devices. This observation, this witnessing of your own thought patterns without judgment or resistance, is the foundation of thought control. You can't change what you don't notice, and you can't master what you don't understand. Start by paying attention to the recurring patterns in your thinking. What thoughts do you think repeatedly? What narratives do you tell yourself about who you are and what you're capable of? What fears occupy your mental space most frequently? What limiting beliefs operate in the background of your consciousness, shaping your choices without you even realizing it? These patterns are crucial because they reveal the architecture of your current reality. If you want to understand why your life looks the way it does, examine the thoughts you think most often. For most people, this examination is uncomfortable. They discover that their habitual thoughts are far more negative, more limiting, more fearful than they realized. They notice constant self-criticism, perpetual worry about things that never happen, endless rehearsal of past failures, and automatic assumptions that things won't work out. They realize they've been running mental programs that sabotage their success, undermine their confidence, and drain their energy. And they've been running these programs so automatically they didn't even know they were there. But discomfort is good. Discomfort means you're seeing clearly, perhaps for the first time. And once you see your thought patterns clearly, once you recognize them for what they are, automated responses rather than truth, something shifts. You gain distance. You realize that these thoughts are happening within you, but they're not you. You're the awareness observing the thoughts, not the thoughts themselves. And this distinction, this recognition that you are not your thoughts, is the beginning of freedom. Now comes the crucial part, identification and replacement. Once you've observed your thought patterns and identified the ones that don't serve you, you must actively replace them with thoughts that do. This isn't about denying reality or pretending problems don't exist. It's about refusing to indulge in mental patterns that accomplish nothing except making you feel worse and perform more poorly. It's about consciously choosing thoughts that empower you rather than diminish you, that move you forward rather than keep you stuck, that open possibilities rather than close them. Let me give you an example. Suppose you catch yourself thinking, I always fail at this. I'm just not good at it. I'll probably mess it up again. This is a limiting thought, a pattern that predicts failure and makes failure more likely by undermining your confidence and effort. When you notice this thought, you don't ignore it or pretend you didn't think it. You acknowledge it. There's that old pattern again, the one that expects failure. And then you consciously replace it with a different thought. I've struggled with this in the past, but I'm learning and improving, and this time I'll approach it more skillfully. Notice what happened there. You didn't lie to yourself. You didn't pretend you've always succeeded. You acknowledged the past difficulty, but reframed it as a learning experience rather than evidence of permanent inadequacy. You shifted from a fixed mindset that says you can't improve to a growth mindset that says you can develop capability through practice. This shift, repeated consistently over time, changes everything. It changes how you feel approaching the task. It changes how much effort you invest. It changes how you interpret setbacks. And ultimately, it changes your results. This process of replacing limiting thoughts with empowering ones must become a habit, a constant practice, a way of relating to your own mind. Every time you catch a thought that doesn't serve you, you interrupt it. You don't fight it. Fighting thoughts gives them energy. You simply observe it, recognize it as an old pattern, and consciously choose a different thought. And here's what's remarkable: the more you do this, the easier it becomes. Your brain is plastic. It forms new patterns based on repeated experience. Every time you choose an empowering thought over a limiting one, you strengthen the neural pathway for that empowering thought. You make it more likely to arise automatically in the future. This is how you reprogram your mind. Not through dramatic intervention, not through some moment of sudden enlightenment, but through patient, consistent practice of observing your thoughts and consciously directing them toward patterns that serve your growth. It's simple, but it's not easy. It requires vigilance. It requires honesty with yourself about what you're actually thinking. It requires the humility to acknowledge that many of your habitual thoughts are working against you. And it requires the commitment to practice this mental discipline even when you don't feel like it, even when the old patterns are strong, even when choosing better thoughts feels artificial or forced. But the rewards are beyond measure, because as you gain control over your thoughts, as you become more deliberate about what occupies your consciousness, something profound happens. You begin to take control of your emotions. Emotions aren't random events that happen to you. They're responses to your thoughts. Change the thought and you change the emotion. Think anxious thoughts, you feel anxious. Think confident thoughts, you feel confident. Think grateful thoughts, you feel grateful. Most people have this backwards. They wait to feel confident before taking action. They wait to feel motivated before beginning work. They wait to feel happy before they allow themselves to think positive thoughts. But that's not how it works. The thought comes first, the emotion follows. Once you understand this, once you recognize that you can influence your emotional state by consciously directing your thoughts, you're no longer at the mercy of your moods. You don't wait to feel good to do important work. You direct your thoughts in ways that generate the emotional state you need, and then you act from that state. This is mastery. This is self-command. This is the difference between being controlled by your internal weather and learning to influence it deliberately. And emotions matter enormously because emotions drive action. You act based on how you feel more than what you think. When you feel confident, you take bold action. When you feel fearful, you hesitate. When you feel enthusiastic, you persist through difficulty. When you feel discouraged, you quit prematurely. So controlling your thoughts isn't just about having a pleasant internal experience, though that's valuable. It's about generating the emotional states that enable the actions that create the results you want. It's about engineering your consciousness to support your goals rather than undermine them. Now, there's another dimension to this that most people miss entirely: the alignment of thought with purpose. It's not enough to simply think positive thoughts if those thoughts aren't connected to a clear sense of purpose, a definite aim, a specific objective you're working toward. Vague optimism without direction accomplishes nothing. What you need is purposeful thought that's organized around meaningful goals, thought that's aligned with a vision of who you're becoming and what you're creating. This is where most people's thinking goes astray. They think thousands of random thoughts each day, pulling in dozens of different directions, with no coherent organizing principle. They think about their goals sometimes, but they also think about their fears, their doubts, their past failures, what other people think of them, all the reasons things might not work. Their mental energy is scattered across competing narratives. and as a result, they make no real progress in any direction. They're not deliberately thinking about what they want, they're randomly thinking about everything, and random thinking produces random results. Purposeful thought is different. It means you've defined clearly what you want to achieve, and you consciously direct your thinking toward that achievement. When you notice your mind wandering toward worry or doubt or distraction, you gently redirect it toward your purpose. You ask yourself, is this thought moving me toward my goal or away from it? Is this thought strengthening my resolve or weakening it? Is this thought clarifying my path or obscuring it? And based on those answers, you either continue with the thought or consciously replace it with one more aligned with your purpose. This alignment creates focus, and focus creates power. When your thoughts are consistently directed toward a definite aim, when you think about your goals with faith and expectation, rather than doubt and fear, when you visualize yourself achieving what you've set out to achieve, something remarkable happens in your subconscious mind. It begins working on your behalf even when you're not consciously thinking about your goals. It notices opportunities you would have missed. It generates insights and solutions. It guides your intuition. It organizes your energy and effort in ways that move you toward your objective. This isn't mystical, though it can seem magical when you experience it. This is simply how your mind works when given clear direction. Your subconscious is an incredibly powerful problem-solving mechanism, but it needs instruction. It needs to know what you're trying to accomplish. And you instruct it through repeated, emotionally charged thoughts about your goals. When you think about what you want with intensity, with belief, with feeling, you're programming your subconscious to support that achievement. When you think about what you don't want, when you worry and doubt and fear, you're programming your subconscious to avoid action, to see obstacles, to generate reasons why things won't work. So controlling your thoughts isn't just about feeling better in the moment, though that's valuable. It's about consciously directing the most powerful tool you possess, your subconscious mind, toward the outcomes you desire. It's about aligning every level of your being, conscious and subconscious, with your definite purpose. And when you achieve that alignment, when your conscious thoughts and subconscious programming are working in harmony toward a clear objective, you become unstoppable. Not because nothing can stop you, but because you'll persist through whatever obstacles arise. You'll find ways around, over, or through every barrier because your mind is completely committed to your success. But here's the counterintuitive truth that most people struggle to accept. Controlling your thoughts is not primarily an act of willpower. Willpower can help, especially in the beginning, but sustained thought control requires something deeper. It requires alignment of belief, emotion, and consistent practice. You can't simply force yourself to think differently through sheer mental effort. That creates internal conflict, and internal conflict drains energy without producing lasting change. What you need instead is to build genuine belief in the thoughts you're choosing to think. This is subtle but crucial. If you try to think, "I am confident," while deep down you believe you're inadequate, your subconscious rejects the thought. It knows you don't believe it. The thought has no power because it lacks emotional conviction. But if you can find even a small kernel of genuine belief, if you can think, "I am learning to be more confident," or "I have been confident in other situations and I can develop that confidence here," now you have something real. Now you have a thought that's both aspirational and believable, and that combination is powerful. So the practice of thought control evolves. In the beginning, you're simply observing your thoughts and trying to redirect negative ones. As you progress, you're actively choosing thoughts that support your goals. And at the highest level, you're cultivating beliefs, deep convictions about yourself and what you're capable of that make empowering thoughts arise naturally. You're not fighting your mind, you're reprogramming it. You're not forcing thoughts, you're building belief systems that generate those thoughts automatically. This deeper work requires emotional involvement. You must feel the truth of the thoughts you're choosing. You must imagine achieving your goals so vividly that your body responds as if it's already happening. You must rehearse success in your mind with such clarity and emotion that your subconscious begins to expect success rather than fear failure. This mental rehearsal, this emotionally charged visualization, is not daydreaming. It's programming. It's how you install new patterns of thought and belief that will shape your future actions and results. Consider how athletes prepare for competition. The best ones don't just practice physically, they practice mentally. They visualize perfect performance. They see themselves executing skills flawlessly. They feel the emotions of success before the event even happens. And when they step into actual competition, their mind and body already know the pattern. They've rehearsed it hundreds of times in their consciousness. This gives them a tremendous advantage because they're not hoping to succeed. They're expecting to succeed. Their thoughts, beliefs, and emotions are all aligned with victory. You can do the same thing with any goal you're pursuing. You can mentally rehearse success until your mind accepts it as inevitable. You can think about your goals with such consistency and emotion that doubt has no room to take root. You can program yourself for achievement the same way you've been accidentally programming yourself for limitation. The mechanism is the same. You're just consciously directing it toward outcomes you've chosen rather than letting it run on autopilot based on old patterns and conditioning. Now, let me address something important. This work of controlling your thoughts and directing them toward your goals doesn't eliminate challenges. It doesn't make obstacles disappear. What it does is transform your relationship with challenges. When you have control over your thoughts, when you've built strong beliefs in your capability and your purpose, challenges become opportunities rather than threats. Setbacks become feedback rather than failure. Difficulty becomes the price you're willing to pay rather than a reason to quit. This shift in interpretation, this reframing of circumstances through controlled thought, is perhaps the most practical benefit of mental mastery, because life will present difficulties regardless of how well you control your thoughts. But how you think about those difficulties determines whether they stop you or strengthen you. The person who thinks this is too hard, I can't handle this, I should give up, is very likely to quit. The person who thinks this is challenging, but I'm capable of learning what I need to know, I'll figure this out, is very likely to persist. Same circumstance, different thoughts, completely different outcomes. So as you develop the ability to control your thoughts, as you become more deliberate about what you allow to occupy your consciousness, you'll notice that your resilience increases dramatically. You bounce back from setbacks faster because you don't indulge in catastrophic thinking. You maintain confidence through difficulty because you consciously choose thoughts that support confidence rather than undermine it. You stay focused on solutions rather than getting lost in problems. And all of this happens not because you've become a different person, but because you've learned to direct your own consciousness rather than being directed by it. The practice itself is straightforward, though not always easy. Each day, you begin with conscious thought direction. Perhaps first thing in the morning, before the day's demands begin pressing on you, you spend time thinking deliberately about your goals, about who you're becoming, about what you intend to accomplish. You think these thoughts with emotion, with belief, with clarity. You visualize success. You feel gratitude for what you're building. You reinforce the beliefs that support your purpose. This morning practice sets the tone for your entire day because you've consciously established the mental patterns you want to operate from. Throughout the day, you maintain awareness of your thinking. When you notice negative or limiting thoughts arising, you acknowledge them without judgment and consciously replace them. When challenges occur, you deliberately choose how to interpret them. When opportunities appear, you recognize them because your mind has been directed to notice possibilities rather than fixate on problems. You're not trying to think positive thoughts every single moment. That's exhausting and unnecessary. You're simply refusing to allow negative thought patterns to run unchecked. You're interrupting old programs and installing new ones through consistent practice. In the evening, you reflect on the day. You notice what thoughts you successfully controlled and where old patterns still exerted influence. You acknowledge progress without demanding perfection. You recommit to the practice. And perhaps most importantly, you think about your goals again before sleep, because the thoughts you hold as you drift into unconsciousness have particular power to influence your subconscious mind. This evening reflection reinforces the mental patterns you're building and ensures that even while you sleep, your mind is working on your behalf. This daily practice, repeated consistently, produces results that compound over time. In the beginning, you might successfully control your thoughts for a few minutes before old patterns reassert themselves. But you persist. You return to conscious direction again and again. And gradually, the new patterns become stronger. Empowering thoughts arise more naturally. You catch negative thoughts more quickly. The time between recognition and redirection shortens. Your default mental state shifts from negative to neutral to increasingly positive. And as your mental state shifts, everything else begins to shift with it. Your energy improves because you're not exhausting yourself with worry and negative thinking. Your confidence grows because you're consciously building beliefs in your capability. Your relationships improve because you're thinking about people and situations more constructively. Your productivity increases because you're focused on action rather than stuck in mental loops. Your creativity expands because your mind isn't constantly running fear-based programs that shut down possibility. Opportunity seems to find you more easily because you're noticing and pursuing it rather than missing it while lost in negative thought. And perhaps most profoundly, your sense of agency, your feeling of being in control of your own life, becomes unshakable. Because once you've experienced directly that you can control your thoughts, and that controlling your thoughts changes your emotions, your actions, and your results, you realize something fundamental: you have power. Not power over external circumstances. Those will always have elements beyond your control. But power over your internal state, over how you interpret events, over what you choose to focus on, over what you believe is possible. And this internal power, this self-command, is the only power that truly matters, because it's the only power no one can take from you. So here's what I want you to understand as we come to the close of our time together. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your thoughts, not by your circumstances, not by what happens to you, not by what others do or say, but by what you think about all of it. Two people can experience identical circumstances and create completely different lives based solely on how they think about those circumstances. One sees impossibility, the other sees opportunity. One sees reasons to quit, the other sees reasons to persist. One thinks thoughts that generate fear and doubt, the other thinks thoughts that generate confidence and determination. Same external reality, completely different internal experience, entirely different outcomes. You have a choice about which person you'll be. You've always had that choice, though you may not have realized it. Your past patterns of thought, even if they've been negative and limiting, don't have to be your future patterns. You can change them. You can learn to observe your thoughts without being controlled by them. You can identify patterns that don't serve you and replace them with patterns that do. You can align your thinking with your purpose and your goals. You can build beliefs that support your success rather than undermine it. You can take control of your consciousness and thereby take control of your life. This won't happen overnight. This isn't a technique you practice once and master completely. This is a lifelong discipline, a continuous practice, a way of relating to your own mind that you refine over years. But every moment you spend consciously directing your thoughts is a moment invested in becoming the person you're capable of being. Every time you choose an empowering thought over a limiting one, you're casting a vote for the life you want to create. Every day you practice this mental discipline, you're building capabilities that will serve you forever. The power is already within you. The ability to control your thoughts, to direct your consciousness, to choose beliefs that serve your highest purpose, all of this is already available. You don't need to acquire anything external. You don't need to wait for circumstances to change. You don't need permission from anyone. You simply need to begin the practice. You need to start observing your thoughts today. You need to identify one limiting belief and consciously work to replace it. You need to spend time visualizing your goals with emotion and conviction. You need to commit to this practice even when it's difficult, even when old patterns are strong, even when progress seems slow. Because here's the final truth I want to leave you with. Everything you want to achieve, everything you desire to become, every goal you've set for yourself, it all begins with a thought. And if you can control that initial thought, if you can direct it consciously rather than letting it arise randomly from old conditioning, if you can choose thoughts that align with your purpose rather than sabotage it, then you've taken the first and most essential step toward making your goals inevitable. Your thoughts shape your beliefs. Your beliefs shape your emotions. Your emotions drive your actions. Your actions create your results. Control the thoughts, and everything else follows. So begin today. Begin now. Observe what you're thinking. Question whether those thoughts serve you. Choose better thoughts deliberately and repeatedly. Build beliefs that support your success. Align your consciousness with your definite purpose, and watch as your internal mastery creates external transformation that will astonish you. The power to change your life has always been in your hands. It's been there in every moment, in every thought you think. The only question is whether you'll claim that power, whether you'll step into the role of master rather than servant of your own mind. That decision is yours. That choice is always yours. And everything that follows depends on the choice you make right now, in this moment, about what you'll allow yourself to think and believe about what's possible for you. Choose wisely. Choose consciously. Choose thoughts that build the life you want. And never forget, you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that observes them, the intelligence that directs them, the power that controls them. That awareness, that intelligence, that power, that is your true nature. That is who you really are. And when you operate from that truth, when you take conscious control of your thoughts and direct them toward your highest purpose, there is nothing you cannot achieve.